Welcome back, everybody, to Conversion to Christ podcast, where we dive into many different subjects about the gospel of Jesus Christ. Today, we have an awesome episode lined up for you, but before we do that, each episode that we film and record goes up on Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, and Facebook and YouTube. Let's get into this next episode. All right, everybody, welcome back to Conversion to Christ podcast. We're here with Daniela. Is that how you say your name, Daniela?
Yes, yeah. You said it right.
Awesome. Sweet. And we have an awesome episode planned for you guys. We're going to talk about her conversion story. And if you guys have watched the last podcast with Samantha, she is probably going to be serving with Samantha at Temple Square. And that's kind of how all this happened, how we got in contact with each other. Did you just see Samantha repost like her podcast story? Is that how you saw it, or?
Yes, and then we had like a group chat with like other other sisters that are also going to be serving with us, and one of them was like, "Oh my gosh, like that is so cool, that's so awesome," and then like that's how like everything came out to like be. So yeah.
Cool. That's so awesome. Okay, so do you just kind of want to introduce yourself, like where you're from, where you're living now, like your life a little bit, without going too in detail of your conversion story?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in El Salvador, and then I moved here when I was 15. So I live in California now. And yeah, we moved in with my uncle. Well, that's part of my story. So I guess I haven't like talked about that yet. But yeah, I got baptized last September, and I will start my mission in a couple of weeks, like November 5th, 6th.
Dang, that's awesome. Sweet. So that's crazy. I didn't know you moved here when you were 15. How old are you now?
I'm 24.
What? Okay, I was gonna say, I don't even hear like an accent. Like your English is so good. And did you know English in El Salvador?
I knew the basics because we had like the school that I went to, like we had classes, and then my parents also did like pay for us to like have like English classes. But it was like literally like, "Hi, how are you? Like my name is like nice meeting you," things like that. Like very, very basic.
Yeah.
And then here, obviously, like, I started going to school because I was a sophomore like when I moved here, and that's when I think I was like, okay, like it's either I learn or I don't pass any of my classes, and I just like hate my life here. So yeah, that's when I learned most of it.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. All right, well, let's just get into your conversion story. Like you can start from the very beginning.
Okay, yeah. So I was born and raised in El Salvador, and we were actually Catholics. Like the school that I went to was like this like private school that was like run by nuns. So like obviously like nothing to do with like, you know, LDS, like completely different. And we didn't really know. At least I didn't know anything about it. My mom's side of the family did, because when they were growing up, like they kind of had like a really hard childhood. And my grandpa died when they were like not babies, but they were little. So it was like my grandma was the only one that was like taking care of them. So my uncle actually ended up growing up with like their neighbor. Like he kind of took care of him, and he was a member. So that's how my uncle started going to church. And my mom says that she remembers like going to like the primary activities when she was little, and like they would like just go sometimes like and like just have fun with the other kids. But they weren't members either. Like my mom never got baptized with them or anything. And then my uncle ended up moving to California. My aunt moved to Canada, so it was just my mom in El Salvador. And she obviously married my dad, and my dad was also Catholic, so that's what how we grew up, like just believing. And obviously we did believe in God, and like I used to go to the youth activities that we had over there, which it was super different from like the ones that I've been now. Like, does that make sense? Like, I think it was funny because I think about it and I'm like, it was like such a social, like just like a social activity more than anything. It was not really like Christ Center or anything like that. So it's definitely funny not to like remember those things and be like, oh wow, like I can see why like I did know like there was a God, but it was never like I never had a relationship with him like the way I do now.
So I have a question for you. I've interviewed a couple of Catholic converts, and
Mhm.
they they kind of told me that it was more like traditional rather than like they really believed in it, almost like it was generational, like they had done it for generations, like their grandparents were Catholic, so they're Catholic, so their kids are Catholic. Is that kind of how it was for you before you converted to the LDS church?
Yeah, I think for sure it was. Obviously, I mean, you're so little that you don't really get a say to like on it, and we just started going right away to the school that we went in, and it was Catholic. So I don't think I ever knew anything else, and it was just because my parents like did that for us. Does that make sense? But it was
Yeah,
definitely
for
not
sure.
a like we will go some Sundays we wouldn't, and we wouldn't like really like have like like not like we wouldn't like read the scriptures with my family and things like that. So it wasn't something that it was very like on like part of my life. I mean, it was because I would go to school and like do all those things, but then outside that, it was never something that we would like do often. So I think it's definitely like generations. Like it just kind of passes on, and then you're just like, okay, like I'll go with it, you know. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Like did the teachings make sense to you? Like even when you came to America, like were you like, "Oh, like the Catholic Church makes sense." Like what did you think about any of the teachings or what did your parents think? Like did they agree with everything?
yeah, I definitely think they did. At least my dad, for sure. Like he's always been very
Like strong?
like oh mom, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not hate, I mean, love him, but it's just funny how I think it's like you say you're Catholic, but then you don't really go to church, and like you don't really apply those things to your life, like the teachings of it.
Yeah.
But I think as far as like me, like I did understand like a lot of it, but I don't think I ever took the time to like really like think of like what that meant for me. Like, oh yeah, like we would talk about like Jesus Christ, like because of like he died for us, but I don't think I ever like took the time to think like what does that mean for me, like that he died for me, like how does that make me feel, like it
Yeah.
was more like learning things that happen and like the history of it, like the doctrine part of it, but it was never something that I don't remember feeling like oh my gosh, like I love him, like this is so cool,
Yeah.
so it's very different. And then but at the same time, like I don't think I ever like that was all I knew. So to me, like that was normal. Like that was it. Like that was end game for me. Like I'm gonna be Catholic forever. I'm gonna get married at church and
Yeah.
like I'm all the
Yeah.
um so when I moved here and I started like learning about like the church, well I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, but it was very different for me to like actually learn and not just like learn about it, but also like think about like what that meant for me and like how that made me feel
Yeah.
and seeing how that applies in my life every day.
So, before you continue, I have two questions. One, does the Catholic Church believe in like personal revelation? Like like
Um,
relationship between you and God and receiving revelation for your own life?
I think they like. I mean, yes, we do, but it's not really like we do. Does that make sense? It's like,
Like
yeah, like
it's not the same
like
way that
about
we believe in it.
exactly. Yeah, because at least from what I remember, it was like we had prayers that we would say. Like it's not something that it wouldn't come just naturally, or like it was
Oh.
like you kind of
Was it like a
prayer
memorized
that
prayer?
yes,
Oh, okay. So,
yeah.
okay, interesting. So, like, do you feel that you like once you like joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you were able to like see like, whoa, like I can have a personal relationship with my Savior? Is that kind of how
Yeah.
you felt?
Oh yeah. I think that that's what it was for me. But then also like I know that other people probably have different experiences with it, and that's fine. I think I was just also very young where I feel like I was so protected by my parents too that I didn't really have anything bad like happening to me, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Up to like be like 14, then like things kind of changed, but up to then like I feel like maybe I just didn't really like thought about it because there was like nothing for me to like worry about it. Does that make
Yeah, for
sense?
sure.
I don't know.
No, I
Yeah.
understand. So, then from when you moved to America, um like give us the story and the like major points where you were like, whoa, like this may be true. Like when was the first encounter you had with like the missionaries or even the church? Like what happened?
So it's so sad, but I actually, when I moved here, we moved with my uncle, and until like we could find our own place, and he was actually a bishop at the time. So I remember he told us like, look, like I all I ask from you guys is just to go to church with me, and we'll have to go to seminary because I have to pick everyone up. So I remember we would wake up super early with my sister, like 4 in the morning, pick everyone, and then go to seminary, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I wasn't open to like listening about the church because when I moved here, that was for me like that was the first time like that we heard about the church. Like that was like at least that I can remember. Like it was the first time like my uncle told us about it, and then I was like, oh okay, like cool, but like I'm Catholic,
Yeah.
like it's like I'm not interested, And it was also very different because I had just moved here. It was a different language. It was just, like everything was new to me. So I was like, you're telling me that you want me to also like change my religion now and like
Yeah.
learn about it? Like it just made no sense. But we did go to seminary with my sister, and I I just think I wasn't open to like learning about it, or like I just wasn't interested in it. Like and my first time going to seminary, it was horrible. I remember I was sitting in the front, and they're like, "Okay, we're gonna read the scriptures, and like everyone's gonna like read a verse, and then we'll just like talk about it." And I just remember sitting there thinking like, "Oh my gosh, like these scriptures are in English. Like I never read like for like what am I supposed to do now?" And I remember looking at my sister, and I knew she felt the same way. And then whatever, we did it. It was fine. And then the person that like or professor, he was like, he said something about Catholics that pissed me off because at the time I was like, I'm a Catholic, like don't talk crap about this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't he wasn't bad about it. It was just like he said a comment like, yeah, like unlike Catholics, we do this and that. And I just remember being like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever.
Dang, that's
So
crazy. So
uh,
like your uncle was a bishop of our church, like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What the heck? And so then were your parents like opposed of you going to the LDS church and seminary?
so my mom wasn't because I think she was very open to like the idea of like finding something that could help us like deal with everything that was going
Like a
on.
community almost to like find a community a
Yeah,
little bit?
yes, and again, because she knew about it since she was little, she wasn't opposed to it. Um, it was just maybe my dad was a little bit like he wasn't obviously too happy about it, but again, he didn't really say anything because he knows it's not a bad thing, but. He was just like, well, the moment that we move out, we don't have to like keep going, so like we'll be
Yeah,
okay, kind of a
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yes, that you tell them like we're not gonna go back. Um, So we kept going for a little bit until again we found our own place and we did our own thing. The only person from my actual like my immediate family was my brother. He kept going and he ended up getting baptized like a year after. So it was funny because I was like, okay, the moment I move out or my uncle's like, I'm not gonna think about going to church anymore. Like I'll be fine. Like I'll be free of all of this. And then my brother gets baptized, and I was like, oh well, which wasn't a bad thing. Obviously, I was happy for him because I knew it was gonna help him a lot. But I was just like, dang, that means that we're gonna keep going, and they're gonna keep bringing it up, and like they're gonna try to like convert me, and like I don't want to. And I just I remember having all this like feelings about it, which I don't know exactly now that I think about it. I'm like, why did I do that? Like, what was going on in my head that I was like so close minded about it? Like, I don't understand why. I think until this day, I'm like, I have no idea what was
Did
going on.
you
I don't know if here.
did you like hear anything negative about other churches growing up, like other than the Catholic Church? And so maybe that's why you're closed minded to like being like, oh, the Catholic Church is the right one. Like,
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe that could have been why. And then I think also, this guy sounds so dumb, but like, I remember thinking, like, you're telling me that I can't drink coffee anymore.
yeah,
That was like, oh, not. I was like,
yeah,
yeah, like that. Like, no, thank you. And then I also remember like my uncle telling us about like the garments, and I was like, so you're telling me that I'm gonna have to wear that every single day. Like, no, there's no way. Like, I was just like,
That's awesome.
yeah,
No, I get it. Yeah. No, I think that's you're gonna encounter that a lot on your mission when you go. Like, it's so funny
yeah,
because you'll like so I was quite far away from the church before I kind of had my conversion, and I remember thinking the same things. I was like, coffee, like we can't have coffee, we can't like all these little things. Like it didn't make a lot of sense to me at the time. And so you'll have that on your mission where you'll teach someone about the word of wisdom and they're like, why does coffee matter in my relationship with God? You know what I mean? Like, but what's cool is you've been through it, so you'll be able to testify really strongly and be like, well, guess what? I went through it. So yeah, it'll be good.
yeah. Girls with coffee, like, trust me, I know they're not fun, but then you can see like why you're doing it, and I think it's like now I think it's like super cool, obviously, but
Yeah.
at that and like no, there's no way, no, thank you, I'm fine. Like, I'll just keep on going in my life. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it was just funny. Like I don't know why I was so close minded, and I think and my sister too. Like I think me and her kind of bonded over that, and like I hate going to seminary. Like me too, and like talk about it. Such a funny thing for us to do or
Yeah.
like say, you know.
Hmm.
Oh, and then I also didn't understand like the Book of Mormon. I was like, okay, like we have a Bible already. Like there's no need for us. Like that to me that didn't make sense
Yeah.
either. Um, and it's not that my uncle didn't explain it to me because I'm pretty sure, like, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure he tried and we probably met with the missionaries. But I was just not in that mindset of like, yeah, let me listen to what they're talking about here.
So was your
So
your brother older or younger?
he's younger than me. We're all like, I'm the middle child, and then I have an older sister.
Okay, so your younger brother got baptized.
Yeah,
Dang. Okay, so why did he like? Were your parents didn't care that he got baptized?
I don't think so. I think when when we moved here, me and my parents were having like a really hard time like in their marriage. So they were going through a lot of things, and it was really hard on all of us. Like I think more than they expected it was going to be, or more than like I thought I would ever. Like I never thought I was going to experience something like that. So when my brother kept going to church with my aunt, I think they were just happy that he had like an outlet where he could just like focus on something different other than like the fights that were going on at home and whatever was happening. So they were never like opposed to it. I think my dad wasn't too happy about it, but my dad's never been the kind of person to tell us like you can do something.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he'll share his opinion about it for sure, but he'll never like take that away from you. Like he'll let you decide and have like, make that decision on your own. So that's what they did with my brother. And they knew again it wasn't something bad. They were happy that he had something good to like fall back on instead of like,
Yeah.
having like things that maybe he shouldn't be doing.
No, for sure.
Um
That's awesome. So then
yeah.
after he was baptized, like from that point, were you still kind of like annoyed, like that you were like, oh, we still have to like be involved with this church?
Yes, I'm so bad,
No,
but
it's
yes.
okay.
Um, I think like I don't want to say that my uncle, my aunt, and like they forced me to believe in it because I don't think they did. Like I can see now from like like just looking back at it, I'm like I'm grateful that they did that. Like they never gave up. But I think at that time for me, it felt like they were just like pushing it into me, and I was like, if you tell me to do something, I'm not gonna want to
Yeah.
do it anymore,
Hmm.
right? Like I wanted to feel it for myself. I just didn't want to keep like listening to like the same thing over and over where they would like share their testimony with me and it was like okay but like I don't feel the same way like I'm glad that you know that that's true but like I
Yeah.
like sorry
Yeah.
yeah
That's
so,
awesome. It's not
yeah
awesome, but it also is just because look at you now. Like you're here. It's just cool, you know?
I know and it was fun because like we after we moved like here right we started doing like we would go to Utah every year for Thanksgiving with my cousin that lives there and the first thing that they would always do they would take us to Temple Square and we would like take tours with the sisters and I just remember like dragging it so much because I was like okay like maybe this year they're not gonna take us because we went last year so we'll be fine but they, oh yeah like sisters like they're they're not members, but like they want to learn about it. And I was like, I don't want to learn about it. I don't know if I'm fine. So we would have to take the tours, and I just remember like being so annoyed at it because I was like, they're just trying to convert me. They're just trying to like,
Yeah.
like put is in my head. And again, it's nothing bad. I'm just saying like that's how I felt at the moment. And it was just interesting. So now I look back and I'm like, oh, Heavenly Father is funny. He's probably like, you hated going there, now you're gonna serve
Yeah.
there.
Oh my
But
gosh, that's so ironic. What the heck? Dang. So
yeah.
so like when that's crazy. So tell me about like the first time that that mindset kind of started changing instead of being like annoyed to go to like anything to do with the LDS church. Like when did there was like a shift a little bit? Like when did that happen?
I think it happened last year. It was maybe like in April. I was like dating someone, and we went and visit my family because he wanted to go visit my family over there because my brother was living in Utah.
Your
And
boyfriend wanted to visit
we,
your family?
yeah, so he's my ex-boyfriend, but like at that time, like
Yeah.
he was my boyfriend. And he wanted to go visit my brother and like visit my family. And I was like, okay, cool. So we went to Utah, and we went to Temple Square because my uncle wanted to take us.
Mm-hmm.
So we went and we kind of like walked around. We were talking with the sisters, and it was like the first time like I wasn't like too annoyed about it. I was like, okay, like this is actually like nice. Like I love this. And I think, and I remember like asking him, I was like, would you ever like consider like you know, like converting into like this church? And he was like, no. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, no. I was just asking. Like, I wouldn't either, but I was just asking. But I think like that's when like I started to like feel like, okay, maybe like this is not so bad. Like, like oh, and then, sorry. So on top of that too, like my best friend, like she's a member. She obviously was more into the church, and her mom, was my boss. So when I started working with them like 4 years ago, they were like, "Oh yeah, like remembers." We actually got the job there because someone from the where my uncle used to serve, it was it's her mom. Does that make sense? Like it's like the mom of my boss,
Like her grandma?
my best friend's grandma.
Okay,
Yes,
cool.
yeah. So she was the Relief Society president at the time, and she helped my mom a lot, like with just like everything that my mom needed after we moved here. And she was like, "Oh, like if your daughters are looking for work, like my daughter has this job agent, like a staffing agency. I can ask her if like she needs someone." And she's like, "Perfect." So my sister started working with her first, and then I got in. And they were always very like, there was just something about them that I was so drawn to. Like I was like, they're just like so normal, like they still have
Yeah.
fun, like they do this and like Bad Bunny and like reggaeton, and it's just like, but they go to church. So I was like, that's interesting. Like I just didn't think that that was like possible. And then me and her daughter became like best friends, and I would hang out with her all the time. And again, there was just something about her that was so different that I was like you're so normal. Like I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just a different spirit that I felt with her. And there was a lot of like students that would go to BYU that she would have at the office working for a couple of months when they were like during their break, and then they'll go back to school and like that. So I became friends with them too. So that's when like maybe like my perspective of like how I saw like members kind of changed for me. But it wasn't until like maybe that April where I was like, maybe like I should like listen to this a little bit more and like more open minded about it.
Dang. So
So
you
yeah,
just naturally started thinking that after like getting to know really good members where you're like, whoa, like these people aren't religious freaks. Like, like, you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, dang, that's really cool. One thing I notice about a lot of other people's conversion stories is similar to that, to where they meet members and they realize like, whoa, there's something special about these people. And there's something they
yeah,
have that I don't, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I think that's so cool because it's like prophesied in the Bible that the fruits of Jesus Christ Church are the members too. That's one fruit of them, that they will be, disciples of Jesus Christ. And so I think that's really cool that you like notice that. So when your boyfriend at the time was like, "No, I would never join this church," like, were in the back of your mind, like, were you like, I kind of like, was that when you started to think like, I kind of like want to learn more about this place, like learn more about this church?
Yeah, I think it was because I was so kind of disappointed about it because so then that made me think I was like, wait, like why do I feel like that? Is it because I do want to learn about it and like I'm sad that he doesn't? Um and don't get me wrong, like I 100% think like I've I've always believed in God, obviously. Like I know that he's always been in my life. And like now I can even look back and look at like just like think about all the moment like the times that he was there for me that I didn't even know that it was like God's work, you
Yeah.
know? But I always remember like I remember thinking when I was with this guy like this is not the guy for you. Like this is not the person you're supposed to be with. And I just remember like knowing that, but in the back of my head I was like, no, like it is. Like I'm fine. Like everything's gonna be good.
Yeah.
And then me and him broke up, right? And I just remember like going into this like depression and like being so sad and all these things. And there was one day that I remember like I was like just curled up in bed like crying, and I just remember like thinking like you're gonna be fine, like it had to happen. And I was just like, okay, like why did this like there's makes no sense. Why did this have to happen, right? Like I thought it was gonna be fine. So the next day we went to like visit my cousin. She lives in like a couple minutes from where we live. And obviously she's a member. So we went and visit her, and she was pregnant at the time, and she had two little kids. So she was like, oh, and her husband was just called to serve as second counselor for like Bishop. So he was gonna be sitting up there now instead of like sitting with her. And she's like, hey, like I just need help for a couple of weeks until my mom gets here. Just like come to church with me. I just need help with the kids. Like, can you just like take care of them and like, whatever. And I was like, okay, like I'll go. Like I remember I was like, yeah, like I'll do it. Like I didn't think of it. I was just like, okay, yeah, like what the heck. So I started going with her. Like the first time I went with her to church, I remember like sitting down and like it was like the first time that I wasn't counting the minutes to get out. I wasn't like trying to like just go. And it was a testimony Sunday too. So I think that also helped me a lot because I could like I heard everyone like testify about it, and I just like felt the spirit for the first time like so strong that I was like, oh, wait a second, what is this feeling that I'm having? Like what is this? Um so yeah, that was like how everything kind of like that's like that was the first time like I remember like my mindset like completely changed, and I was like, okay, like I think I need to give this a try. So
Yo, that's so cool. That's another thing
yeah.
about people's conversion stories is oftentimes when they walk into church, they can just like feel a feeling they've never felt before. So, do you think that was the first time that you ever felt the spirit like really strong in your life? Or do you think you'd felt it in the past too?
Um Maybe I did, but that I can remember that like really like change like everything inside me. I think that was like the first time that I was like, wow, like what is this? Like why do I feel like this? Um so yeah, I
Did you
mean,
tell anyone?
maybe I did. I didn't, no.
You didn't even. So, when like when did your was this your aunt? Is this your aunt, right? Yeah. So, did she invite you to come because she actually needed help with her kids, or was she just trying to get you to come to church?
You know what? I think it was both. Or like she knew what she was doing. And again, like they knew what I was going through at that moment. I was so sad in the present, whatever, right? So I think she just like kind of did it so I could like distract myself and like feel better. And I'm so glad she did. Like I love her for that. Like literally, I just think it was meant to be. And
How old were you?
yeah, but I
How
didn't.
old were you at the time?
I was 23.
Oh yeah, whoa, this is recent.
Yeah,
Okay.
like last year.
Wow. Okay, so then from that moment, talk about like how you somehow got baptized.
Yeah, so I ended up telling my best friend about it. Like, I didn't tell her like how I felt that day. I just remember telling her like, "Oh yeah, like I went to church with my cousin. She asked me to go with her." And she was here in California because usually she's in Provo, but she was I think it was like summertime for her, or I don't know, but she was home. So she invited me to go. to her ward. And I was like, okay, let's go. It'll be fun. And her mom too, like she's like a mom to me, so she invited me to go with her. And I remember going, and it was like you have no idea like how good that day was. Like I just remember going inside, and everyone was so nice. Like all the sisters were like they were so welcoming and super sweet, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like welcome, like hi." And they were asking like my boss, like, "Oh, is she your daughter?" Because everyone thinks that we're related because we kind of look the same. But she's like, "No, this is my friend's best friend." Yada yada yada. So yeah, it was just funny. And then that same day, she asked me like, "Oh, like I told the missionaries about you. Would you be open to like getting lessons with them?" And I didn't even like think about it. I just remember saying like, "Yes, like I'll do it." And that was on a Sunday. Then they texted me on like a Monday or Tuesday, like, "Okay, your lesson is tomorrow at 7. Like we can have it at our house." And I was like, "Okay, cool." Um, so yeah, that's how like I went from like going to church once, like feeling like having those feelings, then going again, and then having a lesson with the missionaries.
Okay,
So,
cool. So how did you feel the first, or how did you feel in general about the missionary lessons? Like, were there any things that you were like, oh, this is weird, or like, how'd it go?
no, so I was super nervous because I think up to that point, like I was never a person that I could sit down and like talk about my feelings, especially about God. Like I feel like that was like such a like touchy subject, you know, like sometimes that I didn't really like open up with a lot of people. So I was like, how am I supposed to sit down with like two guys I've never met in my life and just talk about my feelings, talk about God? Like that would make no sense. So I was really nervous because I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go. Or like, what if I say something I'm not supposed to? And then they're like, kind of like look at me weird. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
I remember going in, and then it was Elder Gardner and Elder Merrill, and they were just like super nice, like super cool, normal kids, right? We're just talking. They made me feel like very comfortable, just kind of ask questions about like me and my family, and like kind of trying just to get to know me. And then we talked a little bit about like what I knew about God and like the restoration. And, like I remember that was like the first thing that they talked to me about, and I was like very confused because I was like, "What do you mean like Joseph Smith? Like who is this guy? Like
Yeah.
why did he even?" Um, but it was super interesting. Like I like everything that they said to me that day made sense. Like there was nothing that they were talking to me that I was like, "Wait a second, like that's a lie." I just like obviously it was new, and I had a million questions on poor things. Like they answered every single one of
Yeah.
them, but it was making sense in my head, you know? I was like, okay, like, I can see that. Like, okay, cool. And then they give me a Book of Mormon, obviously, that day. And, like, their invitation was, like, just read the introduction and pray about it. Pray to God, ask if it's true, and then we'll have another lesson in a couple of days, and then we'll talk about it. And I was like, okay, cool. So that was, like, my first lesson. And I just remember after they, like, left, like, I felt so happy. I was like, oh, okay, like it was just like such a like crazy, like a different kind of happiness that I was like, this is new, like this is interesting. Like I've never felt this way before, and I really couldn't understand why if like we didn't really talk about a lot of the things that I thought we were gonna talk about, but we talked about what I needed to know at that time, I guess. And I remember driving home, and I was just like thinking, like this is so cool. Like I feel so happy, and like everything that they're talking about it makes sense in my head. And I remember thinking like, okay, like I could do that, like, what they're doing. Like I can serve a mission. Like that would be so awesome.
No
And
way.
I still didn't know else about the church other than Joseph Smith and all that, but it was just like this feeling that I had. Um
That's so cool.
so yeah,
Wait, so
it
like the
was
first lesson you thought about maybe becoming a missionary?
yeah. And I wasn't even a member, so I don't know how that happened, but I think I had.
That's so cool. I mean, that's like, I feel like that's like just God preparing you, like literally. And like, I think that's also why the doctrine we have of the premortal life is so cool, because I believe, like, for example, like, why don't other people like end up where you are? You know what I mean? Like, I really think that
Yeah.
in the premortal life, you wanted to like serve God, you loved God. And I think that's why you naturally, and almost like your story sounds so like natural, like it just somehow like happened to where like you're just like, oh, like
Yeah.
I feel amazing, this feels good, like I want to become a missionary. Like I think like that's why I think the premortal life's so cool, because I believe we were individuals and we had free agency in the premortal life. And I
Mhm.
don't think you're just like, for example, other religions teach that like we started at birth, right? Our individual soul started at birth, and it kind of just like is random. You know what I mean? And that doesn't make any sense, because it's like, why did you accept the gospel, but someone in your exact same situation doesn't? You know what I mean? Like, I really think in the premortal life, you wanted to serve God, and that's why maybe when you heard the missionary lessons again and you saw the members and you kind of had started to have that like familiar feeling, that happy feeling, and then you're like, I could be a missionary. Like, that's pretty cool, you know? Yeah. Sorry, what'd you say? Say that again.
Oh no, no, yeah. I was just said like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I can definitely do that too.
Yeah.
Like,
No, 100%. So, okay. So then did the lessons just kind of go naturally? Did you just kind of naturally accept everything? You're like, dang, this, like, I feel amazing. I feel the spirit. I feel like this is right. Did you, oh, first of all, did you pray about the Book of Mormon? Did you read the introduction? Did you pray about it?
yes, I. So I. So I remember I went back home right that same night, and I didn't tell my family. Like my immediate family had no idea that I was like getting lessons with the missionaries. I would just magically disappear like a couple of nights every week,
Yeah.
right? And like, oh, and the day before, I'm sorry, the same day before our lesson, I remember getting out of the gym and I got in my car and I was like, dang it, I didn't read the introduction. My in an hour. I have to do this right now. So I remember down and they were like, you need to read it first and then you can pray about it. And I was like, okay, cool. So I remember sitting in my car, I opened like the Book of Mormon and I started reading the introduction and I couldn't even get like through the whole thing without like I was just like bawling my eyes out. Like I have no idea. I was like, why am I crying over like an introduction? But I remember like reading all of it and then just like knowing like having like that confirmation in my heart. There was like no doubt in my head anymore. Like I didn't even need to do the prayer because I knew I had my answer. Um so it was definitely very like interesting to like have that feeling and like experience that because I was like, wait a second, like why do I feel this way? Like this is like I don't know, it was just so different. Um, so yeah, I didn't pray, but like I did have my answer. So
Whoa.
it was.
That's so cool. That, so like, did you finish it though? Did you finish the introduction?
I did after I bawled my eyes out. I was like, okay, let me finish it.
Oh my gosh.
I
That's
yeah.
amazing. So then you went and told the missionaries and you were like, yo, like I read it
I'm
and I
like this.
felt something crazy. Like, dang, that's so awesome.
Yes.
So from reading the introduction, you knew, was that like, then you were just like, okay, like I know this is true.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I know, like definitely, and we still had like so that then we had our second lesson. We talked about that, and then we learned about. I don't remember what we learned about. I think Joseph Smith actually. And again, I still had a lot of questions, even though I knew that what I read was true. Like, don't get me wrong, like those poor guys, like they probably hated me. Like the amount of questions I would ask was crazy,
Yeah.
and it was just like I still had like that Catholic mentality, like a little bit in my head of like the teachings that I knew.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait, like them it's similar to that, but it is also kind of different. So, like, what do you mean by that? So, it was very interesting because I think they were just the perfect missionaries for me because they were so patient and like they knew how to explain it in a way that it was simple. Like, there was no like big words that I didn't understand. It was just like simple to the point. Like, they would like just testify, like, give me their like a story about it, and then like I would understand what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So, our third lesson I remember we were talking about like the law, I think the law of wisdom. And after that, they were just kind of like, do you want to get baptized? And I was like, I was like, no. I was like, wait a second. Like, I just started like getting lessons with you guys. And then, so then they're like looking at me, like all excited. And I was like, no. And then they're like, what? And I was like, because I feel like I don't know yet? Like, what if like I'm not good enough yet to like do that or take that next step? Um, and I remember I was crying. I was like, no, because I just don't know everything, and like I feel like I'm not worthy yet, and whatever. And they were like, no, like look, it's not about how much you know; it's like how you feel, and like like you're ready for it. Like you been like we've seen the change and all these things, right? So I'm like, okay, like let's do it. So I think like the end of August, and no, I'm sorry, like the beginning of September. And then they were like, okay, we'll have your baptism like September 17th. And I was like, okay, like that's in like 2 weeks. Or it was like a week. Yeah, like 2 weeks. Because they were like, okay, we need 2 weeks because you need to like stay away from coffee. And then like we can like get you going. And I was like, okay. So
Dang, that's
yeah.
so awesome. So, how was your baptism day?
Oh, it was amazing. It was like a very emotional, like spiritual day. I like I'm a crier. Okay, so like like I cry a lot. But I think like the way that I felt that day, and like obviously I was crying, but it wasn't because I was so sad. It was just like I was so happy, and it was like a very overwhelming joy that I felt that day. That I was like, oh wow, like this is so cool. Like the peace I had and the love that I felt from like Heavenly Father, it was like it was something else. Like definitely like very interesting to like experience that. So
So,
yeah.
that's amazing. That's so cool. Yeah, there's
Mm.
I think some of the special like the most specialist days on my mission were like when someone was being baptized, and the spirit there is just so strong and so special. It's like their first time having all their sins washed away, like that weight that they've been carrying their whole life that they're not meant to carry, right? Jesus Christ is meant to take that
Yeah.
from us. And so I think that's why it's so special. And you're going to experience on your mission of just like seeing
Yeah.
like people completely change their lives to be a part of this, and like just like you did, right? So
Yeah.
from that point of being baptized, having a really special day, I mean special weeks, past couple of weeks from your baptism, right? Of just like reading the Book of Mormon, feeling the Spirit really strong. Were there any times that you felt Satan was working on you or trying to stop you from joining, or do you feel like he was working on you after?
Um, I think it did, like 100%. Like, and that's the interesting part of it that I remember, like before, like learning everything that obviously I learned during my lessons. Like, I didn't know that like Satan was like so present in everything that I would do in my life, if that makes sense. Like, I remember there was times where I was just like scared of things, or like I would feel like a type of way. And the one thing that I did learn from the Catholic Church was just like say a quick prayer. And it wasn't even like a prayer that I would like say to Heavenly Father. It was like something like that we had like memorized. Um, but for some way, like I just like felt peace. So I would do that every time like I felt scared, and it was quite often. Like, let's just be honest. But I think also because of the people that I was hanging out with, obviously they weren't members, and not to talk bad about them, they're still like good friends. But I can see how like their um
Like was
influence,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, like they had a lot to do with like me maybe not accepting church faster, like sooner.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe
Um,
because the
you
way
know,
they're living, even if they are good people, if they don't live the commandments, then the spirit can't be there, right? So
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. So then when I was getting those lessons, I remember like my my adopted mom, her name is Evelyn. She she told me, she was like, look, like the same way that there's good, there's also evil. And like we want you to be prepared because like Satan is going to work overtime to make sure that this doesn't happen. And we just want to make sure that you're prepared for that. Like, you understand that if you have any feelings or anything happens, like it's because of that. And I was like, okay, thank you. So I remember, like, I hadn't told my family that I wanted to get baptized. I ended up telling them the day that the missionaries asked me to, because I was like, okay, like now I have to tell them, obviously.
yeah.
But they were the only ones that kind of knew about it. I didn't really share that with my friends or anyone else because I just didn't want I kind of didn't want to hear their opinion on it because I knew that that was probably going to change the way that I felt,
Yeah.
and I didn't want that like happiness that I was having. So yeah, I kind of stay away from like hanging out with them or and telling them that. And then I remember like the day of my baptism, like me and my parents got into like this huge fight. And if there's one thing like I that can kind of ruin like everything for me, it's that. It's like fighting with my mom. Because me and her, like, obviously I love my mom. She loves me, right? But we've had a a heart relationship where like there's been things that like, happen between us that kind of makes it hard for me to like open up with her and like have like a honest conversation about things. So when me and her fight, like it kills me because I'm like I feel like the little relationship that we have, like it's like getting worse. So that day I remember we got into this huge fight and I was just like not feeling like this spirit at all. I was just like so sad and like annoyed about it. And I was just like very angry. And my brother had like flown in from Utah because he obviously lived there, so he was the one that baptized me. So I wanted him to be here. I know, it was very special. So I just remember like crying and then telling him like, okay, we have to go, Jorgito. Like you and me, let's just go. Like if they get there, they get, and if they don't go, then like they don't go. I at the point like I just like I know I have to do this for myself. And we ended up like going to church where I was gonna have my baptism, and I just remember walking in and like just feeling so much better. And like the missionaries were there, and my adopted mom was there, and everything felt like better. Um, but yeah, I think I know that there was a lot of opposition like when I was trying to get baptized, and even after, like even still after, it's not as lot of like there's a lot of temptation. I feel like because I don't think I was never a drinker where like, I needed a drug every night, every day.
You needed a what?
Never like that. A drinker, I would never really like drink a lot. I
Like
wasn't like
alcohol?
yeah
So
yeah.
you needed one like every wait, say it again, say it again.
No. No. I mean like there was not a lot of like temptation for me in that aspect because I was never a person that would like to
Yeah.
drink like every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. So I think if anything, it wasn't like I was tempted to do those things. It was more maybe like my personal like feelings, like my doubts would just kind of get in my head. And like I've always been a kind of person that like I like knowing things. Like I need to know when it's gonna happen, what time, like everything has to be planned,
Yeah.
right? And with church, it's like I get it, because it's not our time, it's God's timing. So it was very hard for me to understand that, like what you want and what you want to happen, like whatever time, it might not be what God wants you to like
Yeah,
go through,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that was definitely something I had to learn. Um,
So,
but
wait, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry.
no, no,
So from like so you're talking about how like I personally believe contention. I mean, we know from the scriptures contention and fights are of the devil, right? They're just not of the spirit. And I think that's one way a lot of people either don't get baptized or Satan tries to get people to not be baptized because really baptism is one of the most important things you'll do in your entire life because you're receiving the gift of the Holy Ghost that will guide you throughout your entire life. And Satan knows that that is such a powerful tool to stay close to Heavenly Father. Because I don't know if you know this quote, but President Nelson, like 2 conferences ago, basically says that in the last days, we won't be able to survive spiritually without the guiding help from the Holy Ghost. And so, like, people without the Holy Ghost, it's very hard to survive having a relationship with God. And that's why Satan knows that. And he knows that you're about to make this decision to be baptized. And he's going to do everything in his power to make you feel not good about it or try to put like trials in your path. For example, like you having a fight with your parents, like right before your baptism, like that's Satan being like trying to stop you and trying to make you feel like this isn't right. You know what I mean? Dang. That's really crazy. I mean, I'm not surprised because I mean, Satan knows what you're about to do. What you're he also knows you're probably gonna go do amazing things in the future and bring other people to Jesus Christ. And so he's gonna do everything he can, especially before your baptism and also even after your baptism, to expect opposition from him because he
Yeah.
really wants you not to do these things, especially people in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because he says this is like, for example, you didn't maybe feel as big of opposition when you were comfortable in the Catholic Church, but
Hmm.
maybe when you were joining the LDS Church, you faced a lot more opposition. I'm not sure, but did you? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think, you know what? It's interesting that you say that right now because I feel like when I was Catholic, maybe I did like experience a lot of opposition that I didn't even know I was experiencing. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't something that I was aware of. And then now with like the church, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've learned so much about Heavenly Father. Like I've learned how much He loves us and like how much He loves me and like His atonement and all of these things. And I know I know the truth, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So it does make sense now that I do realize, and so then I felt his spirit. Like I've experienced that, so I know how that feels. So now I think I'm more aware of when I feel like opposition. I'm like, wait a second,
Yeah,
this doesn't feel
that's
right
cool.
because I already know how the good feels, obviously. So then I can tell right away when this is something that it's not right. So I don't know, it's just super interesting, and like I also think like Satan knows like our weaknesses
Mm-hmm.
too, and like he knows what affects us the most, and he will like grab on that like to that and like make you feel like some kind of way because maybe what makes me upset might not make you upset and you'll be fine,
Yeah,
right? Or what makes me like get angry or like feel doubts and things like that, it's not going to be the same thing for you. But he just knows exactly how to get to us and how to get to our heads and hearts and things like that. So I think if you don't have like a strong testimony or you don't have like you're not strong, your own beliefs and like you don't have that relationship with Heavenly Father, it's easy for you to like kind of like get off track and like fall back into like old habits and things like that. Um,
yeah.
I've seen it like play in my life. So
So from
yeah,
your baptism, I think a lot of people struggle with this after their baptism, and just in general, people in the church struggle with this. But how did you like overcome falling back into bad habits after your baptism?
yeah. I think the one thing that I just like keep holding on to was like my testimony. And it was interesting to learn what that was too, because I was like, "What do you mean a testimony? Like,
Yeah,
what is that?"
yeah,
Um, and then I learned that it's literally like everything like that I've been through, right? Like everything I believe in, like everything that I like all the struggles I had like every day, but then it's like what do I do about those, right? So I remember like every like what I do is just like I pray, like I just like have a conversation with Heavenly Father and I tell him like, what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling and I just have like feel that peace in my heart. And then I just remember like my baptism and I remember the lessons with the missionaries and I remember how I felt the first time that like I went to the visitor center in LA and I just saw the Christ there and I remember just crying and feeling his love and spirit and all those little things like help me remember why I'm doing what I'm doing and kind of keeps me stay away like helps me stay away from the things that I know I shouldn't be doing. So
yeah,
even before I like, do them I kind of like say like wait a second, like I know this is not right, I shouldn't do this, like let's just like try to distract myself with something else, like I'll say a prayer, like I'll read the scriptures, I'll listen to like a hymn. um and I think obviously before I didn't have those things, so for me it was very easy just to fall back in like bad habits. So
yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Dang, that's really cool. So you haven't gotten your endowment yet, right?
Yes, I did. I have. Yeah,
Oh,
or,
you got it? No way.
yes.
Okay, cool. So I want to ask you a couple more questions. So from like how has it been being a member?
It's been so good. Like I think about it and I'm like it's only been a year, right? And then, but in my head, I feel like I've been a member for like way longer than that. After I got baptized, like, I, I, I remember going to like my bishop's office, and I just remember like bawling my eyes out and telling him like, Bishop, like I want to serve a mission, but I don't know if I should. Like, I don't know. Like, there's just so many things. Like, I'm older, and like also like I have a good job. Like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave my family. Like, you know, and I just remember like bawling my eyes out with
Yeah.
him, and it was the first time I've seen him like, and I just he probably thought I was crazy, which is fine. But he was like, look, like you're fine. You still have a lot of time to like think about it and decide, because you can't do it like you have to wait a year. And I was like, okay, you're right, you're right, Bishop. Like,
Yeah.
so then I learned about patriarchal blessings, and I just remember like being like, oh my gosh, like I need to do that. Like that's the answer for all my problems. Like I'm set. Like this is it.
Yep.
And I got my blessing. And it didn't say that I was going to serve a mission. It did say that I was like, going to work with the youth and all these things. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like that is so cool. Like that's my mission. Like I don't have to go. Like I'm going to stay
Yep.
and serve. And then I got a calling with a young woman. So I started working with them. First I was a activity coordinator, and then they changed the presidency, and I was the second counselor with them. So that helped me so much to like learn everything that I missed when I was like younger. And I think I was like every time we would have an activity, I was so excited because I was like, oh my gosh, like we're gonna do this, like this is so cool.
Yeah.
And like, okay, like we do this every year, right? But to me it was so new that I was always like super excited about it. Um and yeah, and just like serving with like other members, and like going to the temple, and like it's just been such a blessing in my life. Like it's just crazy.
So tell me
Yeah.
about like tell me a little bit about your patriarchal blessing. Not what's inside, but how did you feel when you received that? Like was it special?
Oh my gosh, yes. I remember like I was nervous at first, right? And I remember sitting down, and you know, he put his hand on my head, and I just started bawling because I just like I felt like I felt like such a peace in my heart, and like I just knew that like Heavenly Father knew who I was, and like I knew He loved me. And after that, like when He was like giving me the blessing, I just keep like listening to what He was saying, and it was things like I had like that I was going through in my life, and I was like, there's no way that this guy knows that about me. So I was like, obviously it's not him talking. It's like, it's our savior. Like in my Heavenly Father, like he knows who I am, and he knows what I'm going through. He knows what I needed to hear. So it was definitely very special. It was something that I, like, I'm always going to remember like the feeling that I had. Cause I think, yeah, your baptism was special. Obviously, like my baptism, sorry, was super special, and like I felt the spirit and all these things. But that blessing is kind of what sealed the deal for me, where I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
100 dude, like sorry, not dude, but girl, like it literally like no joke, like the like my patriarchal blessing, and I think almost everyone's patriarchal blessing, like they're like, how does this guy know this about me? Like they're like, it's just because it's not from him, you know what I mean? It's not from the
yeah,
guy giving it to you, it's from God. Like that's like I remember mine, he said things that only I knew about. Like I'd never told anyone. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's same with me. Like soon as he put my hands on my head, I just started bawling. Like it was crazy. Like I was like, and this was when I don't know if you know my story. Oh no, I mean not a lot of people know my story because I haven't shared it yet on the podcast. But part of it is that I went out on my mission very unworthily. I didn't really know if the church was fully true, and I had a lot of sins that I still had. And when I went on my mission, I served around 8 months, and then I came home from my mission for a repentance process. So I decided to confess and come home because I realized the church was true. This is a really short version of it, but basically
hmm,
at that time when he had put his hands on my head before my mission and gave my patriarchal blessing, and I was living very unworthily, I still was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. Like it blew my mind because I was like not really that strong in the church, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So, okay, awesome.
Mhm.
So you had your patriarchal blessing. Now I want to hear about why did you decide to go on a mission? Like what was the story behind that?
So, okay, so remember how I told you, like, the very first day I had my lesson with the missionaries, I, like, thought
Yeah.
about it. And then a couple lessons after that, I don't know how the subject was completely random. It came up. They were like, oh, yeah, like, the limit for women to go under mission is, like, 30. And then, like, guys, it's, like, 27. I can't remember. And so then I remember him being like just sitting there, and we're like, oh, okay, so like I can still go, because I was like, maybe I can't anymore, because I was 23, so I was like, maybe I'm like way too old for that. And then they said that, and I was like, okay, interesting. So then they left, right, and me and Evelyn were just talking. She kind of just looked at me, and then she's like, you can still serve a mission, right, if you wanted
Yeah.
to. And I was like, I know, I was like, that's the same thing I was thinking of, and it was just so funny. So we kind of had a moment there where we were like, wait a second, like, is this gonna happen? But then we never talked about it again. And after I got baptized again, I went to my bishop and I cried about it, because I was like, I still had that in my heart. Like, there's the thing about me, like, if I have my mind into something, like, I cannot stop thinking about it until it happens.
Yeah.
Like, right, like I just like, it has to happen to me. Like, and it only happens with things that I know that need to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's not with everything, but yeah. Anyways, so I just kept thinking about it, and then I talked to Bishop, and I was like, okay, I'll wait a little bit longer, and then I got my blessing, and my blessing did not say that. Like, it didn't say like you're gonna go serve a mission,
Yeah.
and I just remember thinking, okay, whatever, cool, like that's my answer. Like,
Yeah.
we're good. But then my mom, she ended up getting baptized in December too. So
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So my mom got baptized in December, and then we went with her to the temple, like just to do like baptisms for the dead, like for the first time in January. And the elders from her work took her, and one of them was about to go home, like in a couple of days, and we went to eat after, and we were talking, and then he's like, "Oh, like, did you know that you can still serve a mission?" And I just remember thinking, like, "Oh my gosh, here we go again, right?"
Yeah.
Oh, I thought about it, and like it doesn't say it on my blessing, and like I just like it's no, maybe it's not for me. And then he was just like, look, I just know, like, I was prompted to tell you that. I just felt like I had to say it. So just think about it a little bit more, pray about it. We'll send you like talks about like missionaries, like sister missionaries, and after that you can give us your answer, and then it'll be okay. Like, if you say no, it's okay, and if you say yes, it's gonna, like, like then
Yeah.
you know that you have. So those few days were hell for me. Like, I was like just constantly just thinking about it every moment of every, like, all my day. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like my mission, like, yes, no, like I knew I wanted it to, but then a part of me was saying like, no, you're not supposed to, Daniela. Like, no, like you're too old, you can't do
Yeah.
that. Like, and I just remember having a hard time like trying to understand what was the spirit talking and what was me talking. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Like,
Mhm.
what thoughts and like what was the spirit trying to say to me, like trying to tell me. And I would pray every night, and I would just bawl my eyes on, just ask him, like, just please give me an answer. It's like a simple yes or no, Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
Like, please,
Yeah.
I, know. And I just felt like I was just so confused. So Sunday comes around, and we had a devotional at my mom's work, and the somebody that went, I can't remember his name, but he talked about the Patriarchal blessing, and he was like, if you ever have questions about anything in your life, you can always go back to your blessing and read it, and you'll get the answer that you need. And I just remember thinking, look, that's not my answer, because I've read this multiple times, and it doesn't say that I'm going to go on my mission. So there's no way that that's like what I need to
Mhm.
do. So whatever, kept going with my day. And then I was supposed to have a lesson with the missionaries at night, because after I got baptized, they still gave me like more lessons. And I wanted to cancel it because I was like not feeling well. I was just like like very emotional about everything. So I was like, no, I don't want to go. But then I felt bad because I was like, I don't want to cancel them either. You know, they already planned everything. So I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just
Yeah.
go. So I went and I didn't tell them anything about like how I was feeling. But the subject just kind of came up at the end. They were just like, oh, like talking about missions and like serving and things like that. And I just started bawling and I just told them everything, how I was feeling, like the fact that I just kept praying. I felt like I wasn't like getting my answer and all these things. And um, they were like, one of them was like, why don't you just like read your blessing? And I was like, no, say I'm a blessing. Like I already read it multiple times and it doesn't say that. So I was like, that's not the answer that I'm looking for. And he's like, okay, well maybe if you get home, just do it again and like, you know. And I was like, okay, whatever. They ended up giving me a blessing. And after that, it was just me and Evelyn talking, and I was just telling her how I was feeling, and she said, "Why don't you just read your blessing?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh! Like if someone else tells me that one more time, I'm like gonna lose it."
Yeah.
I was like, "Evelyn, it's not my answer. It doesn't say it on it." And then she's like, "Just do it, Danny. Like just open it, just read it." And if it doesn't say it, then you don't get your answer, but at least you tried. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay. So then we're sitting on the couch. I open my phone. I go in my, my login for the church, and I start reading my blessing. I open it. The first thing I read, I remember like me and I just like, oh, it was so crazy. Anyways, I read the first sentence, and I was like, that's my answer. That's literally my answer. Like that's what I've been crying about every day for almost like a week. Like this is what I needed to know. And I read it to her, and then I just remember her and me like looking at each other and like crying our eyes out because it was just such a like beautiful moment where like I realized like what he was trying to tell me. And again, it didn't say like word by word like you're going to serve a mission. It said it differently, but it says it on it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kept reading it, and then I found another part where like he mentions that too, and then I was just like, oh my gosh, like this whole time. Um,
Yeah. It literally like
yeah,
patriarchal blessings are like personal scripture for our own lives, and it's like for our own eternal
yeah,
lives. And it's crazy because you can learn something new from it. I swear, like every time you read it, you're like, oh, like that could mean that. That could mean that. Like it's really cool. Like it's a really, really special thing to have. That's so cool. Okay.
yeah, I agree.
So after your patriarchal blessing, is that when you, so that's when you found out that you wanted to serve a mission?
Yes, and I think like again, it's not I didn't have the desire to do it because I did. Like I think that's why I was so torn apart. Like trying to like decide what to do because I knew I wanted to do that. Like it was something like I had put out in my head that like I wanted to. Like if I could help someone that like was feeling the same that I was feeling, get closer to them, like I like 100% want to do that. You
Yeah.
know. Um. So yeah. So that was like the moment where like I felt like just peace about like my answer. You know. And, like should I not? Is he telling me not to? Is like maybe my mission's something different? Like, you know, like things that I was just kind of nervous and like scared about. And after that day, like I only told my parents that I wanted to serve a mission. I didn't tell anyone else, and my best friend obviously. And I did remember like going home and like I like sat down like next to my parents on the couch, and I was like, hey, like I want to serve a mission. I want to. And I think they didn't believe me. Like my mom was like, "Okay, I think so." You know, it was like, "How are you gonna like do it? Like, you know, like you're just gonna leave Island, which is like where I work." Uh, and they were kind of like, not that they weren't supportive, but they were like jumping over the,
Yeah,
you
for
know, does
sure.
that make sense? So then after that, I was like, whatever. Like, I'm not gonna tell them anymore. Like, I'm just gonna do my own thing. Like, I'll do what I have to do. And I was like, and I'm not gonna tell anyone else because I don't want people like to talk me out of it or like tell me that I shouldn't do those things or that maybe I'm like dumb for that, whatever. Um. So yeah,
Dang.
so that's kind of how I decided to do it.
That's so awesome. So like you're, and then you like how soon after did you like put your papers in?
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, that was something else too. Because I talked to my bishop, right? I finally went in and I was like, Bishop, like, I want to serve my mission. Like, I got my answer. Like, we're all good. Like,
Yeah.
everything. Um, and then he was like, okay, well, we still have to wait because he said that I couldn't submit my papers until like 3 months before my year.
Mhm.
So I was like, so you're telling me I have to wait all this time because it was like January, and I was like, okay, okay.
Yeah.
And then he said, it's okay. Like, you have time to get your medical ready and your physicals and all that. And I was like, you're right, you're right. So I started getting that out of the way. I got my wisdom out. Like I did all my physicals, all those things. That was horrible, by the way. Like
Yeah, I
it
agree.
was just, it was not fun. Everyone kept telling me you're gonna be fine. You don't even feel it, and I was like,
Yeah, like
yes,
wisdom teeth is
yeah,
terrible, but yeah, keep going.
so bad. Anyway, so yeah, I did all that, and then finally in like June, July, I was able to like submit everything. He had already opened my portal for me, um, and I submitted my papers, and then it was July then, and then July 30th, I think I got my call, and then I opened it that day, and then I just started getting ready since then.
How was opening your call and seeing Salt Lake City where you're like, "What? Salt Lake City?"
Oh my god, it's like there's no way. Like it was so funny because like I I think like the very first moment I was like, I want to go anywhere except there. And not because I don't love that
Yeah,
place
yeah.
now. I obviously do. But I think in my head I was like, I want to go and serve a mission where I can like knock on doors and I can like have that interaction with people where like I thought that I was gonna have more of a connection with them,
Yeah.
right? Rather than me at a visitor center. So I remember like that was the only reason why I didn't want to serve there.
Yeah.
That I was like I want if I'm gonna do this like I want to do it like I want to do the whole thing
Yeah.
right. Um, so I remember like I opened it and I was reading like Utah Salt Lake City Temple Square and I was like I remember I read Utah. I stopped and I laughed not because it was like a bad thing. I was oh my god what?
Yeah.
And then in Salt Lake City Temple Square, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!" And then all of a sudden, everyone was like, "I knew you were gonna go there. Like I knew it." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, whatever."
That's
Um,
crazy. Dang.
yeah. And then when I finally had time to like think about it, it was just like very special because I was like, "This is where like maybe everything kind of like started for me." You know, like that was a place that I kept going every year. That I, even though I was kind of like ugh, annoyed about it, but it was like still very special in my heart. And I also thought that Hamilton thought it was funny because he was like, "You didn't want to go there, so I'm gonna send you right there," you know. So it was just yeah, it was fun to like find out that I was gonna go there.
Yeah, I think God works in so many mysterious ways, and I think
Yeah, it
like
does.
this is probably perfect for you, and you'll probably find out, especially after your mission, how perfect it is for you. And I think that's so. I don't know. I just think it's so cool because usually we can't. It's pretty hard to predict what God's gonna do with our lives, and
Yeah,
I think sometimes he uses pretty like interesting ways to teach us. Like for example, sending you to Temple Square, like where it all started, where you were annoyed with being at from the very beginning. And I think you're gonna learn so much on your mission, like how much God knows you and how much you needed that. You'll see. Like
yeah.
you probably already feel a little bit of it, but like actually
Oh,
being there, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like I wouldn't change this for anything. You know what I mean? Yeah.
yes, 100% agree. And I think that's like, and I wasn't like mad about it. It was just like funny to me that I was like, "God, you're funny like that," you know, like you're sending me to tell.
Yeah, 100%. That's so cool. So tell me, okay, let's see. I have probably two more questions before we end. How was your endowment? Obviously, you don't have to just how did it feel? How was that for you?
So it was it was super special because I remember being like in the locker room like changing and putting my garments in on for the first time, and like it took me back to when I was like little dumb 16-year-old me thinking like ew like I would never want to become like part of this church and have to wear garments
Yeah.
every day to like
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
being there putting them on. like knowing how hard like I've worked to get to that moment, because obviously like you have to go through your interview where you have to be worthy of it. And it was just like kind of like I don't know, it was just like so special to like see where I was before and like where I'm at now, where like I appreciate that so much, and like I was so excited to do it, and like I understand the meaning of it, and it just made it some like 10 times more special than just like being like, oh yeah, whatever, my garments, I'm gonna put them on.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely getting in like my like an adult, it was just very special going through the whole thing, like the endowment station and all of that. um it was definitely different, not in a bad way. But I felt like I learned so much that I didn't know, and it was like very like kind of like mind blowing for me. And yeah, I think it was just so good.
It
I
was.
was good at
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Go,
I
go,
was
go.
gonna say, like, endowment. It's I mean, we have to keep going to keep learning more. Like, it's very like deep and sacred stuff, and it's really like all about the Savior and all about learning more about the Savior. And a lot of it doesn't make sense for the first time, just like scriptures, right? Like when we read the scriptures, sometimes reading it, we're like, I have no idea what I just read. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and the more you read, the more the Spirit allows you to understand, and the Spirit's with you to understand. And it's the same with the temple. Like the more that you go, the more you're like, oh my gosh, like you learn something new like every time. Like there's even like last week, like I go once a week, and every time I go, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't notice that, or I didn't realize that, or I didn't like, or I have like deep
Okay.
thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, that's really cool. So have you been back for like a second time, third time yet? Have you been back to do an endowment session after that point?
Yes. So after that, I went next week, and then we went this Saturday too. We actually went with Samantha.
Oh,
Like we,
you did?
yeah,
No way. That's
yeah, because
awesome.
close from each other. Like, well, not super close, but like we're like maybe like 45 minutes away, like an hour away. So we're like, we have to go to the temple, and we're like, yes. So we went this Saturday, and then so this was like my third time going, because I just got mine on October 7th, I think it
Cool.
was. Um, yeah, and then yeah, so it was fun, and it's been good. I mean, every time I go, like you said, like you learn something different, and you notice things that you didn't
Mhm.
before. And I just think I feel so blessed to be able to be part of like his plan, and like everything that he has, like the love that he has for us, and all those things. And I also think it's awesome to see like other people there, and like know that they also feel the same like love for him, and the love that he has for us. And I don't know, it's just like very like a very special like moment, every time I go in, and I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, I 100% agree. One thing I didn't notice is
Yeah.
that we both have Jesus Christ pictures on our walls. I didn't even realize that we both had that in our video, so that's good. We love Jesus,
Yeah.
everybody. So,
Yes.
okay, last question. Unless, do you have anything that you feel like you missed or you want to share before I ask you this last question?
And I'll just kind of share this because I think it's important to note like those things do happen. Obviously, like I remember like after I had like submitted my papers, I told one of my really close friends that she's not a member, and I remember telling her about like me wanting to go serve a mission, and she just like was like not on board with it. Right? She was very like like kind of like, don't be dumb, like you're not a little kid anymore, don't be stupid like that, just
Yeah.
like think about you're making, like how are you going to do this, all these things. And she had never said any of those things to me, or like ever, like I don't think I've ever heard her like talk that way. And I just remember like sitting in the back seat of the car because we were driving, and just her telling me all those things, and I like obviously wanted to cry, but I also remember just thinking like, this is not her talking to me, like this is literally like Satan like trying to like talk me out of this, and like make me feel like I shouldn't go, or like I'm not worthy of it, or whatever. And again, it's just interesting to me because I know that obviously a position, it's around us all, like everywhere, and like it's, if we're not, like I said, earlier, like if we're not strong enough with like our own testimony, if we don't know what like, we don't believe, or we don't have the strong like or strong faith or testimony. I don't know.
No,
I'm
no.
trying to say.
I get you're saying. You're like saying that like if we don't have a strong
Yeah,
testimony, we won't be able to like resist
exactly.
against or be able
Won't
to
be-
overcome those like temptations, right?
Yes, yes,
Cool.
100%.
Cool. So dang, that's crazy. Like I've experienced that too where I feel like, I believe I don't know if it's necessarily Satan like inside of them, but I believe that like there I've
Yeah,
had times where I've felt people talk to me on my mission and I'm like that is like an evil spirit that is like Satan like almost like talking through them in a sense that like they're giving into the temptation to talk so badly about what we're doing. Um
yeah,
and it's like totally the temptation of the adversary of Satan to try to stop us, try to put us down for trying to spread the gospel or trying to do the right thing. Um
yeah,
who knows? It could be Satan himself too. I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I
Yeah.
know exactly what you're saying. That's crazy.
Also, my brother's serving a mission in Idaho, so
Awesome.
I can like,
Idaho and
yeah,
Utah.
uh,
No way. Siblings going to Idaho and Utah. That's awesome.
just awesome. I mean, it was such a blessing, and I think seeing him make that decision, like also helped me like be able to like take that next step that I needed to take, right? And we his mission allows him to, like allow his family to visit them once like during their mission.
Okay.
So when like 2 weeks ago, like October 17th, for his birthday to visit him, and I think seeing him there, it was like exactly what I needed to like continue on with like my process, because I like this past few weeks, I feel like, or month, like it was really hard to like make peace with the fact that I'm leaving, if that makes sense. Like, I just think like all the feelings of like all the doubts kind of like were just like too much for me, and like I was already thinking like, should I really go? Like, is this like really what I need to do? Like I know it is, but also like, is it really
Yeah.
like
100%.
Um, and just like those doubts, and like maybe just the feeling of like me being scared of like what's gonna happen after, like I don't know. So like me seeing him, it was literally what I needed, because I saw how happy he is, and like how much he's changed, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is my little brother, like little boy that I would just like have to take out and like buy food for him. Like now he's a this whole missionary, completely changed, like super mature. So it was really like interesting to see that, and it was like really like nice, and like such a beautiful moment for me to like realize like what it means to be a missionary. Like the the work that you're doing is, it's no joke. It's not something like like, oh, whatever, you're just a missionary. It's actually like something that changed people's lives, and like I obviously knew that because it changed mine, but seeing it from like seeing my brother do that too, it was like definitely very special. So
Yeah. Missionary work is the most important thing going on the earth today. Like gathering Israel
mm,
and bringing other people to Jesus Christ and helping them see the true gospel of Jesus Christ has been restored, like, and been brought back to the earth. Like, it's the most important thing you can do. So, like, whenever you
mm,
feel like, especially on your mission, if you ever feel like, because there's gonna be low moments on your mission where you're gonna, just like there's low moments in your daily life now, there's gonna be on your mission, and you're gonna, when you're low, you're gonna have those thoughts of like, what am I doing? Like, this sucks. Like, why am I here? And
uh,
literally, like, just remember that you are exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're doing the most important work on earth. Like,
yeah,
literally, Jesus Christ, while he was on earth, sent out missionaries to go and preach his gospel. And we're like, every time I hear that missionaries are representatives of Jesus Christ and they literally wear his name on his chest because we are his servants, sharing his gospel, helping other people who don't have the gospel have that, I like get so emotional. It's like so important, and it changed my life forever, and it's going to change your life forever too.
Thank you. I can't wait. I'm like super
That's
excited.
okay. Well, let me ask you this last question. So, for anyone who is going through maybe a similar situation as you, or someone who maybe is questioning if the church is true right now or if God exists, what advice do you think you would give them?
I think it's like just not to think about it too much because again, I'm like an overthinker, right? Like I need to know like facts. I need to like be able to like see things so I can like believe them and understand them. But when it comes to like the gospel, like it's not like that. You can obviously, you're not going to see God like sitting next to you, right? Like at least not physically, like you know. So you won't get those answers like that, but you can definitely just feel them in your heart and like feel the spirit and just like listen closely. Like don't close your mind to it. Like don't try to like argue it with it or be like, well, yeah, but this isn't that. It's like because then you're setting yourself up for those things. And I'm not saying that having doubts is a bad thing because I do think it's a good thing. I think like that helps build your testimony for sure. But it's what you do with those doubts. Like if you have like questions about something, like you can't just sit on them and be like, well, I don't know if I believe in this because this kind of doesn't make sense, right? Like, okay, it's a valid point. Like, don't get me wrong, obviously it is, but then what are you gonna do about it? Like, are you gonna go on the internet and like just type the question, and then obviously you're gonna get all these different answers that are maybe not accurate, or other people that think differently, um, or are you gonna just like kneel down and like pray about it, right?
Yeah.
Or go to the scripture, try to get the answer from there. So I think just like remembering the love that you felt at some point. Like you said, there's some people that are members that are kind of questioning things. Again, it's valid. It happens, but also like think about all the moments that you felt the spirit, that you felt the love that Christ has for you, and like hold on to that. And I think having faith that everything is going to work out the way that's supposed to, it's just going to change the way you see things. And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. I really like how you said if you don't have like an open heart to even, because like what's it gonna hurt you just to try to have an open heart to see if it's true or not? And if it's not true and you have an open heart, then it's not true. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think it's cool how you said you're setting yourself up for failure if you just have a closed heart. And I think that's one thing you'll learn on your mission too, is you'll teach people who pray to ask if it's true, but already have the answer in their mind that it's not. So they'll listen to your message.
Yeah.
They'll say, "Okay, fine, I'll pray about it, like whatever." And then they pray about it, and they're like, "Is it true?" It's like, "Well, obviously it's not. Like, why am I praying about this?" If they have that attitude, of course not. God's not gonna like convince them. He's not gonna be like we have to invite the Spirit in our life. We have to want it. You know what I mean? We have to want to know if it's true or not.
Exactly, 100%. And I think for me, and I say that because I saw that in my life. Like I felt that way. Like when people would tell me like before, like they would talk about church, like I kind of knew my answer in my head. I was like, yeah, whatever. Like it's not true, right? And as much as I would love to go back and change those things, like I think it also kind of had to happen that way because now I appreciate this church even more than I did before. I appreciate this like the gospel that I know, and like it helped me like see the bad first so I could know what really is good. And like
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, it's just everyone is different, and like we all operate different ways, and we all have different thoughts and feelings, and we act differently. So I can't really obviously tell someone how to feel, and like you can't do that because it doesn't work that way. Like I mean, I wish I could give my testimony to someone, but you have to build your own.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you're know if it's true or not.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. It's just very interesting how that works. There's this girl that the missionaries and I were teaching. They invited me to go with them, and she, I mean, you. you would have lessons with her and you knew like she was ready, right? Like you could just kind of feel it, like she understood a lot of the things and she wanted to change, and she changed a lot. Like I remember since I met her, it's like to now I was like, oh my gosh, like you're a completely different person.
Yeah.
Um, but then she also kind of struggled with a lot of like addiction and things like that. So she kind of like would set herself up like to fail everything. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like she will always be like, I do want to, but like I know I'm not gonna be able to stop this, and like I don't want to like say yes and get baptized, and like and then I fall back and like sin,
Yeah.
you know. And I was like, well, but like I know what you mean, but you're putting that yourself in that position where you're already saying that you're gonna fail something that you haven't even tried not to.
Yeah.
Um, and again, we can't change someone's mind, and we can't force them to do something that they don't want to do. So it has to come from you, and you have to just remind yourself like that you are stronger than what you think you are, and that most of the time, like it's just a position that around you that it's like working harder to get you, and the only way that's gonna happen if you let them, if you let that affect you. Yeah, I mean it's easier said than done, but definitely there is ways to like staying away from things like that.
Yeah, another thing too that like you can teach on your mission is that some people are so afraid that they're gonna fall back into sin after their
Mm-hmm.
baptism. And for one, there's 2 points to this: is they need to have faith. They need to have faith that the Holy Ghost will help them, that the Holy Ghost, that this
Yeah.
church is true, and that God will help them overcome these weaknesses over time. But two, have you seen The Chosen? The like, it's a it's this
The show?
it's called The Chosen. Like it's Jesus Christ's
Yeah.
show, right?
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
haven't. Like they told me about.
well, it's really good. And there's this scene where Mary Magdalene basically falls back into sin in the middle of the show. And she's so ashamed. She doesn't want to be around Jesus. She doesn't want to be around anyone. She wants to go away. She doesn't want to go to church anymore, which at the time was they gathered together to break bread, right? And
Yeah.
and Jesus Christ, basically, finally, they have her come back to Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ was like, did you not think you would sin again after I healed you once? Like, did you think that this was like a one time thing? And I think that really resonates with a lot of people because sometimes when we make this big change to come back to God and then we sin again, we feel like, oh my gosh, like I did all this and I still go back to sin. Like, what a loser I am. You know what I mean? Like, Satan really works on you to think that you're just like a terrible person. And then,
Yeah, like you're not.
yeah, exactly. And Jesus Christ basically says the exact opposite. He's like, did you think this was like a one time thing? Like, you'd be perfect in one try? Like, this is going to take so many hours, so many days, so many months and years to become like me. And if you think
Mm.
that you're never going to sin again, then you're going to be really disappointed because you're here to learn from your sin and do everything in your power to stop. And so I think that's one thing you can help people understand your mission is that if they're scared of that, you can say, here's the thing, like you will fall into sin. It's inevitable. We're all human, but it's what you do after the sin. It's what you decide to do. If you're going to come back to church, come back to God, take the sacrament and try harder next time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I love that you say that, because I think with me, like, I remember the first time, like, the couple of lessons that I had first, I was like, I'm just not worthy of all of this. Like, there's just no way that I can, like, get past to, like, the things I did and whatever. Like, it's just no way.
Yeah.
And I think understanding how the atonement of Jesus Christ works in your life, like, that's the key point of everything. Because once you know how that works and why he did what he did for us, then you know that you still have his love, and that you can repent, and then you can work on getting better and being better every day. It's not like you get baptized and you're perfect. And people always ask me those things, like that are not members, like my friends and other people. They're like, oh, like, so, like, how do you feel? Like, is it like, like, is it perfect now? And I'm like, no, 100% no. Like, it's far from it. Like, if anything, I feel like a lot of things went like really bad after, in my family and things like that I was obviously not expecting. But then I remember that I have something to fall back into. Like, I have like the scriptures I have pray, like I can pray, like I have his love and like I'm never alone. So it's just like really, really knowing that and like understanding and being able to grab yourself like to that. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for everything you've shared today. I've really felt the
Yeah.
spirit, and I'm like super grateful that you reached out to me too. I want people on the show that want to share their stories, because sometimes people, like for example, I had someone on who really didn't want to be there. And I asked him to be on because he had a cool story, but I didn't realize he didn't really want to be there. And so I didn't end up posting it because the spirit, it's pretty hard for the spirit to be there for someone who doesn't really want to share their story and help others grow closer to Jesus Christ, right? So I'm like, I'm always grateful, and anyone listening as well, like if you want to share your story, I'd love to have you on, because people who want to help others grow closer to Jesus Christ, the Spirit's always there. And it helps people who listen to these too. And we have a lot of people listening right now, so it's pretty cool.
I think I've never really like done something like this. Like obviously when I would go visit with the missionaries, like they'll ask me like, oh, share your testimony, your story, whatever. And then like, and it is cool. Like it's so nice because we there was a state conference like a couple months ago, and they asked me to like share my conversion story. And I remember like, I was like dying because I didn't want to like stand in front of everyone and tell
Yeah.
them that. But the amount that came after like to talk to me and like tell me like thank you so much, because like I feel like I don't feel so lonely after that, or like it just like blows my mind, because it is true. Like sometimes we feel like no one understands what we went through, what we're going through, and we think like just because everyone like seems so happy and like they have a perfect life, it doesn't mean that they do. And they obviously still go through like a lot of the struggles that we go through as well. And like just to be able to like to have someone that or have someone out there that you can kind of relate to, like it's just like it's awesome.
Yeah,
so
right.
Thank you.
Sweet. All right, everybody, this has been Conversion to Christ podcast. We're super grateful that we had Daniela on to hear her story, and we will see you on the next one. Bye bye.